cell phones off or to vibrate, I'd like to call the Hammond Redevelopment Commission meeting to order on this Tuesday, January 5th, 2016. It is now 4:34. Can you please stand for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence after? Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Do the roll call first.
Okay, we're gonna do number 3, or our roll call first, Cynthia.
Here.
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 Here, for the record, all 5 are present. Okay, we'll move to line number 2, our organizational meeting. If you can,
Mr. President, members of the commission, as is the first business meeting of the year, and typically you would have your organizational meeting. You have officers of president, vice president, and secretary. Typically, we've sort of just taken them in order. Hear any nominations and for the office of president to start out with. If there are one or more nominations, if there are more than one, then we can certainly take a vote. If there's just one nomination, then we'll, just take a roll call vote on that nomination, but you're free to nominate for the office of president.
Mr. President, I would like to make a nomination to nominate you, Tony Hopperidge, as president for the Redevelopment Commission for the year 2016.
Are there,
Second that.
okay, are there any other motions or nominations for the office of president? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Rangel, if you can call the roll.
Yes.
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 All right, congratulations, Mr. Hopperidge. We have the office of vice president. Any motions or nominations for that position?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Greg Myricks for the vice president for the Redevelopment Commission. I second that.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, Ms. Rangel, if you could call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes 5 yes for Vice President for Greg Myers.
Okay, and lastly, the office of secretary. Any motions or nominations for the office of secretary?
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Kathy Navejas for the office of secretary.
I'll second that.
Technically can't, but that's all right.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other motions or nominations for the office of secretary? Hearing none, Ms. Rangel, will you call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes 5 yes for Secretary Kathy Navejas. Congratulations. Okay, that finishes our organizational meeting. Number 4, declaration of conflict of interest. Okay, number 5, communications. Number 6, minutes for December 15th, 2015.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes for December 15, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the minutes of December 15th, 2015. Is there any questions or discussion or correction about these minutes?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes 5 yes. Okay,
You can go down to number 8.
okay. We will move back to number 7. We're gonna skip that for a minute. Number 8, approval of the First Amendment to Development Agreement with APG Real Estate Development LLC.
Members of the commission, you have before you First Amendment to Development Agreement. You'll recall that back in February, ATG and the Redevelopment Commission entered into a development agreement for the 3-story office building at Oxbow Park. As stated in the redevelopment, or in the development agreement, there have been some contingencies with the soil that have caused a roughly 60 to 90 day delay. So they're asking, and I think staff is requesting that you approve an amendment to the development agreement that I believe, and I don't have the development agreement in front of me, but it moves the completion date from July 1, 2016 to October 1, 2016. So a 90-day extension. Anyone who's been by there has seen they are working through the winter, and the walls are coming along, but there was some soil issues initially that set them back right off the bat, and then they were concerned, quite frankly, with, depending on the type of winter we're going to have, constructing through the winter. So I think it's more prophylactic than anything else, because they didn't want to come to you on the eve of the July 1st deadline and ask for an extension at that point. So
Certainly sounds like a fair request to me.
And everything else, all the terms and conditions remain the same, is that correct?
everything remains the same, except that deadline for completion moves from July 1st to October 1st.
Well, Mr. President, I make a motion for approval of the First Amendment to the Development Agreement with ATG Real Estate Development LLC.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the First Amendment to the Development Agreement with APG Real Estate Development LLC. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion passes 5 yes. Okay, number 9, public hearing, the confirmatory resolution of the Hammond Redevelopment Commission adopting an amended declaratory resolution that established and designated the Gateways redevelopment area, approved for the redevelopment plan for the Gateways redevelopment area, and designated the Gateways allocation area in order to expand said redevelopment area, to amend said plan for the Kennedy Avenue expansion and Calumet Avenue expansion, and to expand the Gateways allocation area.
That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful. I see Mr. Bowditch in the back, Mr. President, and probably the way you want to handle this, if Dan can come up and just give a 1-minute overview of what this resolution does, then you can open the public hearing and move on to consideration of Resolution 2016-01.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the commission, the public hearing this evening has been advertised in the paper. It is the final step in the approval process of the amending declaratory resolution for the Gateways expansions for Calumet Avenue and Kennedy Avenue. The public hearing has been published in the paper. Notices have been sent to those property owners impacted or within the expansion area by statute. neighborhood associations have been noticed. The planning entities of the cities that deal with land use permits and improvement location permits or building permits have been notified. The overlapping taxing units have been filed and submitted a report of economic and tax impact. So everything has been done in accordance to state statute. The documents have been on file with the department executive director since December 23rd, which is 10 days prior, if there was any reason for public viewing. This evening is really to consider public input as the final stage. Once public input has been, public input either written that was received today, I believe at 2 o'clock and timely stamped, that can be read into the record, or individuals who want to remonstrate for or against the plan. The redevelopment commission would consider those comments and consider a confirmatory resolution whether to approve or not approve. If approved, the next step would be to file the document with the auditor, record it with the recorder, and then file those recorded and duly stamped documents with the DLGF, and everything is completed. Basically, the plan is a land use plan for redevelopment of the Kennedy and Calumet Avenue corridors for the properties adjacent to the corridor, basically from the Borman Expressway up through 165th Street in both instances, with a little bit of leeway at some of the intersections for commercial development. The intent is in the back, we've identified all the key numbers. There are no properties on the appendix which shows acquisition list. It is specific in the plan that there are no properties at this time contemplated for acquisition by the Redevelopment Commission. It is merely a land use plan for the commission for development as development occurs or is proposed to the city for commercial land use, as well as the use of tax increment dollars from the Gateway's allocation area to incentivize or make public improvements along those two corridors. It's very simply my
Members of the
2-minute
commission, I
overview.
think in English, what all that means is that you've expanded your Gateway redevelopment area. It gives you some flexibility with regard to proposed developments. It gives you some flexibility in expanding the allocation area so that if there's an incentive to be provided or that can be negotiated at some point. And I think it's important to note two things. Number one, of the property which would be included in this expanded area, there's no property that is currently listed on an acquisition list. So it's not like you're saying, or the city in general is saying, that they want to acquire any of the property, because we are not doing that and not contemplating that at this point. And then secondly, there's no plan, this doesn't change the zoning, it doesn't change anything of what's there now. What this does simply is allow you some flexibility and allow you some oversight with regard to proposed development in the future. And with that,
Today's purpose, and by the way, getting an English from an attorney is an interesting concept.
yeah, I thought you might find that ironic.
That was my 1-minute overview through Attorney Westphal.
But today's purpose is a public hearing.
That's correct. Well, and then you have the confirming resolution, which is the last step in the process. So I do have one piece of written communication from the Concordia Cemetery, which is there on Calumet Avenue. And it was dropped off, as Dan mentioned, today at 2 o'clock, and it says, "To whom it may concern, Concordia Cemetery located at 651 Calumet Avenue, Hammond, Indiana, is represented in this matter by Mr. Brian Benko, CPA and Treasurer of the cemetery, and Laura Bergman, Attorney and Secretary of the cemetery. The cemetery hereby files the written comments, remonstrances, and objections with the Secretary of the Commission. It has been represented that today's meeting is to receive and hear comments on the amended declaratory resolution and redevelopment of Calumet Avenue and Kennedy Avenue between the Expressway and 165th Street. 1, the cemetery hereby objects to any action by the commission that would prevent entrance to or exit from the cemetery by cemetery workers, funeral processions, family members attending grave sites, funeral directors, florists, or other persons visiting the cemetery, or that would otherwise affect the operations of the cemetery. 2, the cemetery hereby objects to any approval by the commission of work done to the properties adjacent to the cemetery that would result in damage to the cemetery property or the flooding of cemetery lands. The cemetery hereby requests that before any such approvals are made by the commission, the proper engineering studies are done by the city and approved by the cemetery. Sincerely, Brian Banco, CPA, and Laura Bergman, attorney. That's your written remonstrance, which will be filed and made a part of the record. I would just note that, and I think Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, the cemetery itself is not in the expanded redevelopment area. And the reason for that is that you're not going to redevelop a cemetery. Okay, so that was specifically and contemplated by your staff excluding the cemetery from this expanded redevelopment area, because in order to do any development there would require things that we're not contemplating doing, like moving graves and things like that. So they were specifically excluded for that purpose.
So then we're not gonna be, they don't have to worry about their exits and entrances.
There's nothing in the redevelopment expansion that affects, there's nothing in this confirming or declaratory resolution or the expansion of boundary lines that affects their ability to exit and entrance the cemetery, nor does your approval tonight affect or damage or cause flooding to the property. So, I understand that if there's a development next to them or near them, they could have a concern. And at that point, if somebody would bring a proposal for development along Kennedy Avenue, they could certainly voice whatever opinion they had at the appropriate body, whether it's Plan Commission, BZA, Board of Works, or downstairs in the building department.
And from our perspective, I would concur with Attorney Westland and restate that the Concordia Cemetery is not within the expansion area. A letter, a notice of this public hearing was sent to them because of the fact that they are a major land use along the corridor, and we didn't want them to feel left out in the process. So by sending them the notice, it actually was to our benefit, because now we have some record of their concerns or issues for any development that may occur, which includes ingress, egress, flooding issues, so that as proposals may come before the commission, you have that on record to ensure that you consider those issues beforehand.
So this was duly filed. Does it need our acceptance, a vote, approval, just discussion? It's on
No,
file, and I trust we would be doing the key words here, the proper engineering studies in any event.
And so that's the only written remonstrance that you have filed, and so at this point, it'd be appropriate that if there's any member of the public that wants to speak on the expansion of the redevelopment area and gateway allocation area, then now would be the time to do that.
I will open the public hearing now. Public hearing is open. If anybody would like to come forward, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Roughly.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Greg Kaplan. I own Crazy Kaplan's and a good portion of a block there at 175th and Calumet. And my concern is, if you said, Mr. Westland, that right now, presently, the redevelopment doesn't have anything in the hopper for as far as acquisitions, does this gateway limit any other new businesses coming into that area by any means, or future development in there? I mean, does it restrict it or hold anything back from going into these areas from the expressway to 165th along the Calumet and Kennedy Avenue corridor?
You're gonna have your normal zoning and other issues, and yeah, I mean,
Right.
when you're part of a redevelopment area, then the redevelopment commission has some oversight to make sure that it's consistent with a redevelopment plan, but the practical aspects of your question, I mean, if there's gonna be new development in there, and it's consistent with the zoning, and/or you're able to,
Existing zoning.
right, or you're able to get a variance or change of zoning or whatever through the typical process.
Standard procedures,
Right.
standard policy.
You,
Okay,
you're gonna be fine.
okay. That was the main concern. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jocelyn Prue. I am the owner of one of the businesses on Kennedy Avenue and also the president of our neighborhood association. I have just a question. Some of us, not concerned, we're actually really happy that this is taking place. And a lot of the things that we had given feedback do seem to be on the plan, so we're happy with that. But we are kind of questioning what some of the stuff means in terms of the zoning. We noticed there are certain sections on Kennedy Avenue that are designated PUD, and we would just like to know what that means, just an explanation from someone.
I would have to see the actual plan itself, but a PUD is a planned unit development, so, which means there's a specific ordinance that sets forth the zoning and what can be done within that, and each PUD ordinance is gonna be a little bit different, which is why it's, I see Mr. Poland in the back, I didn't see him sneak in. I'll let him answer this.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
You're starting out your explanation very well, thank you.
So I saw you waving.
Yeah, actually, on Kennedy Avenue, there is no planned unit development district. So I'm not sure what, no, it's not PUD. You know, say the streets again? That's where the railroad tracks come in at an angle? That's C1. But yeah, actually, in neither Calumet Avenue nor Kennedy Avenue there is a PUD. But as Mr. Westman was saying, a planned unit development is creating a unique zoning ordinance for that area that would control the development. It's usually mirrors, or it can take pieces of other use categories and merge them into that new zoning district. The black line is just showing the boundaries of the area. This dot pattern. This is on 69. C1. This is C4. And then there's a green for the. Yeah, that's the office dot pattern. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Answer the question?
Yes, you did, thank you. Second question, you mentioned no contemplation of acquisitions at this time. If that were to happen in the future, how would that actually, does this plan allow for that to be contemplated, I guess, in the future?
It could always be contemplated, but we'd have to amend what we're doing, and you'd get notice again, and, I mean, there has to be, we'd have to put your property on an acquisition list, and we'd have to amend the list, which has nothing on it right now.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Raleigh Keene. I'm the owner of the Hessville Self-Serve Car Wash, the boarded-up car wash on 169th and Kennedy Avenue. My main purpose for being here is just to make sure that the sale would not be hindered. I don't have a buyer. I've been trying to sell for a little over a year now. My main concern was as long as this doesn't affect prospect buyers coming in, and this would affect that in any way. But now, listening to this, it may even be an advantage. I just wanted to clarify.
The hope would be it would be
Yeah.
an advantage.
So I just wanted to clarify that there's no downsides to prospective buyers coming in and developing anything they can. So, sounds like it's an advantage.
if you're within the zoning, and, yeah, I would think that a developer would want to find something in a redevelopment area, in an allocation area, because of the ability to potentially negotiate
Sure.
with the city.
Great, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward and speak?
My name is Dan Stemper. I own the property at 6505 Calumet Avenue, right on the corner of 165th and Calumet. They said that basically they would not go as far as Concordia. But I'm just a little bit north of that, next to White Castle. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Right there is Ridge Street, and I'm right on the corner. Oh, yeah, I'm the carpet. Would that affect, how far north are they gonna go? It says 165th, but
It goes to the CVS, and if I said that it didn't go as far north as the cemetery, then I misspoke, and I apologize. What I meant to say is that that the cemetery was specifically excluded,
right,
okay, because it's a cemetery. It goes further north, all the way to the CVS,
to the CVS.
yes.
So that would be,
You would be in.
okay. So there's no plan as to where it's actually gonna be, where it's gonna stop, or it's gonna develop, or it's, you know,
Well, under this plan, it stops at the CVS.
okay.
The redevelopment area stops there.
So, yeah, they're right across the street from me.
Right.
I was kinda curious what, you know, but the future will tell what exactly you're gonna really wanna do, right?
The future, the economy, development in general will tell what that corner turns into, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, then public hearing is now closed. We have, number 10, a resolution 01-2016, confirmatory resolution of the Hammond Redevelopment Commission adopting an amended declaratory resolution that established and designated the Gateways redevelopment area, approved the redevelopment plan for the Gateways redevelopment area, and designated the Gateways allocation area in order to expand said redevelopment area to amend said plan for the Kennedy Avenue expansion and Calumet Avenue expansion, and to expand the Gateways allocation area.
Mr. President, it appears to me that the citizens that came out, and thank you all citizens, by the way, seemed at least happy with the answers received, with no major conflicts. Therefore, I move we approve Resolution 01-2016.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. There's no further questions or discussion. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Resolution 01-2016 passes 5 yes. Okay, we're gonna move back to, number 7, homebound conditional forgivable loan approval.
Commissioners, this is for 5 homebound conditional forgivable loan approvals. They are all here today. You guys wanna come?
Please come up.
she may wish me to translate.
First of all, thank you for coming out tonight.
All right, so let's see. Let's pick something. Ms. Nino, how did you hear about the program? Your lender. Who's your lender? Okay, what's the company? Do you know? Is it Mr. Yates or Miss Yates? Savante Yates? Yes. How did you hear about the program?
Through my mortgage agent.
Your mortgage agent? And who's your mortgage agent?
Michelle
Cynthia?
No, she's with Success Mortgage Partners.
Okay. Ms. Martin, how did you hear about the program? From your lender? Oh, no realtors, what's going on
A
here?
lot of lenders here. And who's your lender? With?
Oh, okay, I know about Caliber. I'm sorry, what's the couple's name?
Jose?
Jose? How did you hear about the program?
From the loaner, the lender.
The lender? No realtor said anything about this program? Oh, okay. But who's your realtor? Okay, I know Manny. About time. So, see, I'm a realtor as well, so I like to hear that, a realtor at least spoke about the
You
program.
got one.
And excuse me, Commissioner Myrick. Señora Contreras, ¿usted entiende el comentario que hizo el señor Myrick? Sí. ¿Y señor Contreras?
Sí.
Okay. Si no entienden, por favor, me dejan saber.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the homebound conditional forgivable loan approval for the 5 applicants.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the homebound conditional forgivable loan approval for the 5 applicants that are present tonight. There's no further question or discussion. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes 5 yes.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome to Hammond. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Felicidades.
Okay, number 11, reports. Ms. Africa Tarver, like to share anything with us tonight?
Yes, actually, tonight I got a really good email from Drew Fox from 18th Street. He was really excited. He told me that they being 18th Street, received their federal permit, which allows them to start brewing. So if they push really hard, they're anticipating an opening at the end of January. So we're really excited about that. And I also recently spoke to the owner of Byway Brewing, who said he's anticipating opening in February, and the hotel is anticipating opening the first quarter of 2016. So you'll see a lot of development taking place within the city of Hammond.
I actually spoke with one of the byway owners, and he said they're wishing they could go faster. That it's going well, but their complaint is that it's not going fast enough. Not necessarily negative, they just want to,
To be open.
Their building does look good, though.
Their building looks really good.
Wow, so far, I think they've been able to work. Okay, thank you. So, Luana Miller.
I want to wish everyone a happy new year and congratulations to the officers for 2016. I am working on our annual action plan for 2016-17. It should be up on the website next week. I will have a public hearing in your office, in the Redevelopment Commission meeting on the, I believe it's the 17th, the 19th, okay. So you'll have more information in your next packet. I'm also working on the point-in-time homeless count that will take place on Wednesday, November the 27th. And that's where we go into the city and we actually speak with any individuals that's living on the street in their cars and see if we can get them to come in or see what their needs are. So that's going to take place on January 27th. I'm also working on our affirmatively furthering fair housing plan That plan actually is not due until October of this year. However, I have to do a lot of outreach and host a lot of meetings and public hearings. So I have a lot of work to do this year. So that's where I'm at.
Sounds like your calendar's already full, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Okay, number 12, bills, register of claims.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the register of claims for October 8th through December 28th of 2015. Claim number R52558 through R52810.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the register of claims for October 8th, 2015 through December 28th, 2015. Claims R52558 through R52810. Questions or discussion on these claims? Okay, then roll call on the claims, please.
Soto Presley,
Yes.
Hesperkey,
Yes.
Navejas,
Yes.
Myrick,
Yes.
Hopperidge.
Yes, motion passes 5 yes. Okay, number 13, new and unfinished business.
Mr. President, members of the commission, you have Executive Order 15-32 in front of you, which was executed by Mayor McDermott on January 1st, 2016. The purpose of the executive order is to bring compensation for boards throughout the city into some sort of uniformity, as they weren't, or at least that's been sort of the process that's been ongoing for a while, and I think this is sort of the last step in the process. You'll see that there are a couple of boards that fall within the purview in your budget, namely the Economic Development Board, which is on the bottom of the first page, the Hammond Plan Commission, and then Hammond Redevelopment Authority, which is the fourth from the bottom. And Mr. Hopperidge and I were at a meeting the other day where I think the mayor expressed the need for uniformity in what some of the compensation of what some of these boards are. What we have, you'll notice that the Hammond Redevelopment Commission is not listed there, and I think the reason for that is because statutorily you're a separate body, separate from the civil city. And so the mayor can't, by executive order, establish your compensation. What he's requesting is that you, and we'll have to go through a budget amendment to get there, is that you establish your compensation at $8,500 annually to be on this particular board. Also, he's requesting that you approve Executive Order 15-32 and including compensation for the redevelopment authority to be set consistent with what the Plan Commission is, $200 per meeting and a $2,600 maximum. One thing that, I think needs to be pointed out is that in order to get the compensation you've got to go to the meeting. So that was something that was stressed in Mr. Hopperidge's and my meeting as well, is that, and that really hasn't been the case with this particular body, but I don't know if that's the same for all bodies, but wanted to establish a policy that, in order to be compensated for attending the meeting, you've got to go to the meeting. So at the end of the day, what we're requesting is that you approve Executive Order 15-32, that you approve a compensation for the Hammond Redevelopment Authority of $200 per meeting with a $2,600 maximum. I can tell you in the 10 years I represented the Redevelopment Authority, we've had 3 meetings. So it's not something that comes up. The Redevelopment Authority meets on an as-needed basis when there are issues with specific bonds, not all bonds, but very specific bonds. They don't meet very often at all, but up until now, I don't believe they received any compensation for being on that board. So we're establishing that as well as your own compensation of $8,500 annually.
Am I missing something? The math's not like that. 20.
That's a separate body, that Hammond Redevelopment Authority.
Which math are you referring to?
The 8,500, that's not.
For this body? No, but it's the same thing that he's requesting for the Port Authority, the Sanitary District, and the Water Department. I think the thinking is that those 4 bodies meet on the, not that anything's more important than anything else, but the type of issues that those bodies are dealing with on a meeting in and meeting out basis. That's why that number is a little bit higher. I don't know that the math works or doesn't work.
Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't get it. I may have misunderstood you. I thought you were saying that about us. That's why I.
He's over 8,500 versus the 200 meetings, 600 for the other.
I guess I misunderstood that we were gonna get the 8,500.
That's correct. You are.
That's substantially more than 200 meetings.
The Economic Development Commission or Economic Development Board, that's 200 per meeting, 2,000 maximum. And the Redevelopment Authority, which is a different body than you, but is in your budget, so you have to approve it, is getting 200 per meeting. They do, but if they approve the executive order.
Commissioners, any more questions? Mr. President, I move we approve Executive Order 15-32.
I second that.
And I would ask that the approval include $8,500 annually for the members of the Hammond Redevelopment Commission and $200 per meeting capped at $2,600 for members of the Hammond Redevelopment Authority.
I so move.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the executive order 15-32 for the $8,500 for the redevelopment commission and $200 a meeting for the Hammond Redevelopment Authority with a maximum of $2,600. There's no further questions. Roll call, please.
Presley?
Yes.
Casperkey?
Yes.
Navejas?
Yes.
Myrick?
Yes.
Hawkins?
Yes. Motion passes 5 yes. Okay, if there's no more new and unfinished business, number 14, public comment, you can come forward again and speak. You have 3 minutes. I'd like to come forward. Okay, public comment is closed, but before we adjourn, I'd just like to recognize Councilman Dan Spitali at large. Thank you for coming out tonight. And also our newly city engineer, Dean Hutton. Welcome.
Mr. President, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. Can you all signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Meeting is